Time for the International Press Review now. Florence Vilmano with me here on set. And it's almost a week ago now, isn't it, the London riots, but still dominating a lot of the newspapers.
That's right. We're going to start off by looking at The Independent. It looks at the riots. The political battle lines are being drawn. Now, it shows that these riots have sparked somewhat of a political upheaval over the policing of the violence and the longer-term measures required to solve the individual and social ills behind them, and also as to the causes. For instance, according to the cover of The Independent, David Cameron blames children without fathers and schools without discipline, whereas opposition leader Ed Miliband blames bankers and MPs for failing to set a better example for society. Now, there's an interesting little graphic you see there inside The Independent that shows the disagreements between different politicians. Now, they're all eager to avoid a drop in approval rating, so they're tossing around this hot potato over these disagreements. Now, there you see the disagreements between, for instance, Home Secretary Theresa May and London Mayor Boris Johnson and the police. Now, one issue that people aren't agreeing on is this idea to hire a former U.S. police chief and gang specialist, Bill Bratton, to come in and clear things up in the UK.
I love that graphic, very well thought out, whoever did that one. Now, one of the issues, of course, people are talking about is people directly electing police commissioners and hiring the former U.S. police chief, Bill Bratton, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, and they're taking a closer look at gangs in the UK. For instance, the International Herald Tribune says that there was a kind of a post-riot wake-up call on the reality of British gangs. Now, British Prime Minister David Cameron identified the growth of gangs as a key factor behind what he called a descent into anarchy. Now, the International Herald Tribune takes a look at some of these gangs where they have names like the Booger Bar Boys, the Casher/Money Crew, the Bang Bang Gang. And according to the International Herald Tribune, these are underground armies that spearheaded this wave of violence in the UK. And it says that these British gangs consciously mimic U.S. gang ambitions and their style, in whether it's from their bling to the lingo. And there's an interesting piece in The Independent that also talks about this kind of gang style. You could say it's a somewhat controversial piece by John Bird, who's one of the founders of The Big Issue, who says that much of what has happened over the last week is about fashion and style. And he says that he observes what he calls this uniform on the streets, hoodies, etc. And he says that there's the kind of fascism of fashion. If you're wearing the uniform, then you belong and you're safe, and if you don't, you could become a victim. And he says that fashion has become this kind of weapon, and it's kind of a life or deathness. And he compares this fashion statement in the UK to what's happened in inner cities in New York and the US. And he says that we have to break this disgusting form of social control.
Okay, a lot of the papers looking for explanations right across the world. You picked out something from China.
China Daily, absolutely. It's a piece that by Murat Qureshi, who's a teacher at Beijing University, and he says that he's trying to find out how this snowballed into a wider phenomenon rather outside of London. And he says that the real catalyst for the riots is this kind of incessant growth of aspiration among young people to be at the top of the consumer's tree, this kind of voyeuristic obsession with the super rich. And he says that we have to instill in our children the value of true happiness, a form of happiness that doesn't come in a flat screen TV.
Right, you go to Syria now, how Iran is gearing up for a potential change of balance of power.
Absolutely. This is a piece in the Sharq al-Awsat that shows how Iran is kind of trying to change its pieces in the chess game in the region. It's trying to look at alternatives in the case that Bashar al-Assad's regime collapses. And it says that Iran is looking at Iraq and Yemen to spread its influence, because if Bashar al-Assad's regime collapses, it'll be the end of this sectarian belt that Iran has imposed on the region.
And briefly, we've just got time for a quick cartoon to do with the financial crisis.
Quick cartoon, absolutely. Now, it's following the downgrade of the U.S. by Standard & Poor's last week. The U.S. has been getting a lot of criticism, including from China. Now, there you see it, a somewhat depressing-looking cartoon of Uncle Sam, who has painted himself into a corner, and whoops, he says. So, yes, it follows up on what we were seeing last week, a lot of criticism of the U.S., namely from China.
Needs a trapdoor, maybe he'll get one. All right, Florence, thank you very much. Florence Vilmano with the international papers then here on France 24.